So in case you missed it, Wits University and the University of the Western Cape have passed COVID-19 vaccination policies that are set to come into effect essentially from next year. On Friday, Wits announced that all members of the university community will be required to be vaccinated against COVID-19 in order to access the institution's precincts. Meanwhile, UWC also saying that it's drafted an interim COVID-19 vaccine policy for next year. In fact, they join UCT, which has been the first university essentially to mandate the jab. To discuss what this ought to mean for students as well as higher education generally speaking, let's bring in former Fees Must Fall leader Chumani Mwxele, who joins us now via our video link. And Chumani, thanks very much for making time. It's great to have you on the program. I mean, you know, I'll say up front that we're speaking to you really in your capacity as a person who used to be a leader of student movements broadly. And it's in that space that we're hoping to engage, or to engage you rather, on what you think ought to be the response specifically by current leaders within university environments to what universities are essentially trying to get at here, which is to create a safe environment that's conducive for working during the midst of a global health crisis.
Thank you very much. Good morning to your listeners. Well, I suppose the response by the university leaders is an appropriate one at this stage, given the fact that the global pandemic that has been ravaging the world, it is a serious matter. But of course, one would assume that some of these measures are a bit ahead. And of course, universities, they tend to pretend that they are ahead of society and therefore they are leaders of society. One would have expected such measures would follow the state. So far, the South African state has not went as far as promoting a compulsory vaccination program. But the universities, I suppose, they're trying to press a particular line leading society by example, by saying, let's have a compulsory vaccination program. And I think, of course, this approach is to really respond on a dire situation that we're in. First and foremost, no one knows what is happening. The variant is keep on mutating all the time. Therefore, the university scientists, I think they are using this as part and parcel of their way to control the virus itself by saying, look, let's vaccinate and see how it's going to go from there. And of course, the compulsory vaccination program that is being proposed is as a result of seemingly the slow pace of people coming forward voluntarily to vaccinate. And of course, the university environment knows that the majority of its people are students and they happen to be in the same space at the same time most of the time. Therefore, they think that there is a huge potential for this group of young people interacting in the same space, that they must be preempted in terms of what needs to be done by giving them an appropriate approach that says, look, let's vaccinate compulsory so that we can see how can we handle the pandemic.
Given the objectives of the university, at least insofar as public health concerns are related, what do you reckon ought to be the response from the different SRCs at these institutions?
Well, I suppose the SRCs must welcome this move. Really, here we are dealing with a deadly disease that has killed so many people. And therefore, it will be appropriate to say, how do we prevent more death from this pandemic? And that, for me, is to say, look, what is it that scientists are saying? At the moment, scientists are saying, let's vaccinate. And of course, vaccination is a well-known phenomenon. I mean, we vaccinate every year for different diseases that are not that much deadly. But this one that is seemingly is deadly, we must find a way to say, look, what are the possible ways to minimize the scourge of this pandemic? And of course, vaccination in itself is not a panacea for everything that is related to COVID. We are still having so many questions about the vaccination, the side effects of it, and so on and so forth. But at the moment, what we see from scientists and the science of this pandemic is that the side effects are not that severe, and therefore the majority of people have not received strong side effects. Therefore, it is recommendable at the moment to really think about the compulsory vaccination program, because people voluntarily they are not coming in their numbers. Therefore, the SRCs across the South African universities, they must be able to welcome this program.
Yeah. The disagreements within the student body, though, have also brought into sharp focus the discourse, or the lack thereof, that's taking place among students when it comes to issues specifically of health. You know, in some instances, this could be seen as some kind of opportunity to revitalize that aspect of what student activism is actually about. You have been part of, for instance, according to many really, shifting the dial insofar as political activity is concerned, at least on campus. Do you reckon this also presents an opportunity to finally bring to the fore the discussion specifically about public health and the role that students have to play in that world?
Well, I suppose it is about time that we must really engage robustly on this debate. And, well, of course, students are not in isolation. They are responding to a debate that has been going on in society at large. At the moment, you can see that, indeed, there's many questions more than answers generally in society. And then, of course, people have got unreserved reservations about this pandemic, rather. And I think, of course, we are tasked as thinkers in the university space to really proactively engage with the debate of the pandemic and also lead society on what is it that needs to be done. And I think in this instead, student leaders across the board, they must be able to boldly support the approach by the state as well as by the university management to say, look, let us, at least at the level of university, have a compulsory a vaccination program so that we can be able to minimize at least the risks that comes with this pandemic. And of course, there will be those who will ask fundamental questions that deals with the question of legitimacy about this call, that deals with the question of the effectiveness of this call in responding to vaccination itself. And of course, I mean, people always have conspiracy theory about what is it really that this vaccination is doing generally. And of course, these debates are motivated by those skepticism across society. But in the university community, I think we must be able to be level-headed about this because we are dealing with young lives that are confronted by many things. Therefore, a clear leadership approach that is strong, that is forthright, to be able to articulate what needs to be done. Yeah. And I think at this stage, student leaders must be in consensus to say, let us resolve this matter by at least minimizing the side effects as well as the danger that is associated with the pandemic. And I think if we are to lead society, we must be able to take risk position that are not necessarily endorsed by all people in society. That is part of leadership. We must take position and live with them. At this instant, I think the university leadership is taking a serious decision to say, look, let's have a compulsory vaccination. And you will see sooner the society will follow, realizing that, I mean, we are being blocked now in the UK from traveling in and out of South Africa, precisely because the international community is trying to respond to the mutation of this virus. And I think university leaders as well, particularly students, must be able to respond decisively and clear in terms of their leadership approach.
Chumani Mwxele, thanks very much indeed for engaging with us. We appreciate your time here on the Weekend Report. Chumani Mwxele is a former student leader, mostly, or rather, contributions that are notable during the Fees Must Fall movement and the Roads Must Fall movement at the University of Cape Town. Once again, thanks very much indeed.